Hey gaming fans, so today's another Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile, and this one is for the GOAT format, and it's, well, I guess return to the top of the deck. That's kind of the theme that this is going for. So I've been playing around a little bit with this idea. So let's get with the deck. So the first monster we have here, we have 3 Winged Sage Falcos. Interesting card, 1700 attack, which is pretty decent. It could take down a breaker after it used its counter, stuff like that. But you can return your opponent's face-up attack position monster that is sent to the graveyard by this monster as a result of battle to the top of their deck. So that's pretty much the theme of this deck, is we're going to be returning your opponent's cards back to their deck instead of to the graveyard. Now, the only thing that's bad about this guy is that the monster has to be face-up attack position. So we'll address that later on with other cards to kind of punish your opponent for setting stuff. And then we also have similar card, but this one is a monster that battles with this defense position card is returned to the top of the owner's deck. So what's good about this guy is he's got the 1800 defense, so a lot of cards will run into him and bounce right off of him. And even if they destroy him, I believe the effect will still go off anyway, so they'll still go right to the top of their deck, which again hinders your opponent. And then we're playing one of these guys, the Legacy Hunter. He's not the greatest, but I mean he does fit with the theme. So when this card attacks a face-down defense position monster and destroys it and sends it to the graveyard as a result of battle, your opponent returns one random card from their hand to their deck, and then their deck is then shuffled. So it's kind of doing the same idea, but it's not returning the monster this time. It's returning a random card from your opponent's hand, and then they're going to have to redraw it, which kind of sucks for them. But and this is good. I mean, it's 1,000 attack, so most likely you'll be attacking things in defense mode, but whatever. So then we got 3 of the Mysterious Guard. So this is a flip effect monster, very similar to the last monster there, but return a face-up monster on the field to the top of the owner's deck. Also, if there's a face-up warrior type monster on your side of the field, you could return another face-up monster you control, or to the owner's hand. So we do have, I mean, if you did have your Legacy Hunter out, you could return, 2 monsters. But your main effect is just getting that monster, a face-up monster on the field to the top of his owner's deck. Then for some support in this deck, we are playing a lot of face downs. So we're going to have Magician of Faith and Mask of Darkness, because we do want to return a lot of spells and traps to our hands. So, getting these effects off. And because we're going to be discarding a lot, I put in 2 Night Assailant. So you target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that target. So that's a pretty good effect. And then when this card is sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can target one flip effect monster from your graveyard, except this card returned it to your hand. So you can either return, the Magician of Faith, a Mask of Darkness, a Mysterious Guard. So you got a lot of targets in there. And of course, if you're using cards that force you to discard as a cost, these guys are always good to use. And of course, Sinister Serpent, same idea. You discard it, next turn you get it back to your hand. And then to help out with all these flip effect monsters and stuff that needs to be face down, we're going to have 2 Tsukiyumis. Pretty self-explanatory. The spirit monster, when you summon them, you target a monster and you flip them face down. So you can also do that on your opponent's monsters and, get rid of them with certain effects such as Grand Margs. So we're going to go with the Grand Marg of the Rock Monarch. I know this isn't a favorite for some people. I never really liked this monarch myself. I always liked the other ones better, but he kind of fits better in this theme, especially when you got things like Tsukiyumi, where you could flip a monster face down, because when this card is tribute summoned, you destroy one face down card on the field. This will help punish your opponents if they think they're safe just setting their monsters. So that's part of that, what I was saying earlier. And just to help deal with some pesky back row, I threw in another Mobius. Also, this deck kind of suffers from strength. So, having a 3rd Monarch in here, just a little bit more strength in the deck. As our biggest monster really is 1700 attack, being the Winged Sage Falcos. Winged Sage Falcos. Weird name. So to dispel, we have 2 back to square 1. I was debating on having 3 in this deck. 3 might be a bit much. Discard 1 card from your hand, return 1 monster on the field to the top of the owner's deck. Really fits with the theme, really cool. And of course you can discard things like your Night Assailants and your Sinister Serpent to help pay for the cost. And, it just slows your opponent down one more turn. Also, to slow your opponent down, we have Swords of Revealing Light. And then you can also flip your opponent's monsters face up if you know, when you activate it, and it negates their effect. I think it does. No, wait, does it? Flip all your this remains face up your opponent. No, it doesn't. I thought it did. Never mind. But then we have Noblemen of Crossout. So essentially, again with your Tsukiyumis and stuff, and you're just going to punish your opponent if they think they can just start setting all their monsters. So, you know, Nobleman's always going to work. Plus, you could return it back to your hand with your Magician of Faith if you need it to replay it. And because we're setting a lot of monsters, my body's a shield because of Noblemen of Crossout, because a lot of decks in this format will run Noblemans. So, you know, at least having some protection. My body is a shield. You set that if your opponent tries to Nobleman. This says when your opponent activates a card or an effect that destroys one monster on the field, you could pay 1,500 life points, negate the activation, and destroy it. So that'll stop the Noblemen of Crossout. And then I threw in some cards to help beef up your monsters, especially cards like Winged Sage Falcos. Being 17 is good, but if you can drop a Mage Power or a United We Stand on them, you could probably bring them over Chaos monsters and, you know, the Chaos Sorcerers and the Monarchs. You know, just you can almost get them up to destroying BLS if you get enough resources on the field. And then we're going to play our standard, you know, Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, Snatch Steal. I went with Snatch Steal because we are playing Monarchs. So, you know, if anything, you could steal their monster, tribute it off, or if they do drop a really big monster that you can't get over, you just steal it. So, you know, Snatch Steal is good. But I guess you can also play Delinquent Duo if you want. I was going to play that in here, but I thought you're already playing with a lot of weaker monsters. You got to be careful with your life points. So, and then MST and Heavy Storm again to deal with back row, because this is kind of like a control deck. You're going to be attacking with a lot of weak monsters, so you want to make sure your attacks go through when they can. And then for the traps, of course, we're playing 3 of the Phoenix Wind Blast. This is another card that bounces a card on the field to your opponent's to the top of the opponent's deck. Well, I guess it says owner, so you could return your own if you really want to. And then that's, you know, next turn they have to redraw that card. And again, you can return this card to your hand with Mask of Darkness to kind of keep doing it every turn. You know, flip up your Mask of Darkness, bounce this back to your hand, and then flip the Mask of Darkness down with Tsukiyumi. You know, that kind of idea. So I also threw in a Time Seal, which is part of that combo as well. I know that that's another deck that runs that kind of combo where you can continuously make your opponent skip their turn. Not the focus of this deck, but still, you know, you can pull it off. And it will be annoying too if you bounce a card back to their deck and then you play Time Seal. Now they can't even draw that card. They have to wait a whole extra turn. And then again, because we are playing a ton of face-down monsters, you are prone to losing to cards like Noblemen of Crossout. So Spell Shield type 8. Your first effect is negate the activation of an effect of a spell card that targets one monster in the field and destroy the spell card. So if they try to Nobleman your face down, you can activate this. Or if they activate any other spell card, if you have a spell card in your hand, say Back to Square One or something that you don't want to activate, you could just straight out negate the spell card. So that's pretty much the deck. I mean, that's the first concept that I've come up with. Maybe I'll play around with it again and try and come up with different ratios and cards. But anyways, I'd like to hear what you have to say. And if you've ever ran a deck like this before, this is just kind of like a small control deck. Just fun, more to irritate your opponent than anything else. Anyways, hope you like the deck. Throw some comments down below. Hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.